Hello and welcome to Supplier Soundbytes, Mobility Global's bite-sized autonomy podcast series, where we sit down with industry experts to explore what's changing in automotive and why it matters. One topic, one key takeaway, all in around 15 minutes. Today we're exploring one of the biggest challenges in automotive AI, not just how to build AI, but how to build AI that people can really trust. From fleet management and predictive maintenance to safety insights and sustainability, AI is increasingly making decisions based on enormous volumes of real world vehicle data. But as AI becomes more deeply embedded in products and services, questions around bias, data quality, and reliability are becoming just as important as model performance. To help us unpack that, I'm delighted to welcome Sabina Martin, Vice President of Product Management at Geotab. Sabina leads product strategy for one of the world's largest connected vehicle platforms, with AI-powered products supporting millions of vehicles globally. She has first-hand experience of what it takes to build AI that delivers real-world results. Sabina, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, and you're most welcome. Sabina, just before we start, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Geotab?
Definitely. So, Geotab is the leading telematics company globally. We have over 6 million connected vehicles, and we collect billions of data points a day from fleets across the globe. I like to think of our mission as helping customers, reduce their risk and increase their profitability. And it's not just about their vehicles as part of their fleet, but it's all of their connected assets and operations. And so ultimately, we aim to help fleets move the needle on a number of their key KPIs, from reducing total cost of ownership, increasing their uptime, reducing collisions, helping them with efficiency and emission reduction. You name it, we try to
Yeah.
tackle it and really focus on those customer results.
Thanks very much indeed for that intro. Just to begin, AI is everywhere in automotive at the moment, but there's often a gap between exciting demonstrations and solutions that genuinely deliver value. From your experience, what separates AI that works in the real world from AI that's simply an impressive in a demo?
Yeah, so for me, it really boils down to, does this solve an actual customer problem, right? Whether that's
Yeah.
removing a manual task, improving or making a decision. I think a good frame of reference is, would this be a problem that you would have seek to solve anyway? And AI is really the accelerator that gives you the ability to build an even better solution. Then that's a problem worth solving, and AI can likely help you get there. I think the other part is reliability, right? So a demo is not the real world. It doesn't have
Yeah.
your unpredictable conditions, whether that's noise or different types of environment or different
Mm.
personas or accidents. So a good example in our industry is we provide, video coaching solutions in cab for drivers to help them reduce their risk by course correcting along the way. But ultimately, a driver will only trust the system if it's consistently reliable, meaning
Mm.
that it's true positive events and they're in near real time so that they can change their behavior right away. If they're accused of a behavior due to a false positive by the model, or that it's triggered way after they've already stopped using their phone or eating, every one of those situations is going to cause them to lose trust, and that will spread quickly to the rest of the fleet and potentially to others in the industry, and is ultimately a product failure. So I
Mm.
think really, if I had to sum it up, it would be making sure that you're adding customer value and solving meaningful problems, and ensuring that you can do that with trust so that you can drive adoption of your solutions.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much indeed for that. Geotab's AI models are built on data from millions of collected vehicles operating in different countries, climates, and driving conditions. I wonder, what have you learned about the importance of data quality and diversity when building AI at that kind of scale?
So the first thing I would say is that data quality is quite a broad statement,
Yeah.
right? It has
Yeah.
multiple dimensions. The first might be, what is the breadth of your data coverage in
Mm.
terms of, in our world, we have to support vehicles across a number of different make, model years, older vehicles, newer vehicles. The other is also like the depth of that data and the fidelity of that data. So I'll give you an example by
Yeah.
fidelity. When we set out to build our collision detection models, whether that's a major collision and then those minor collisions where you might back up and hit a pole or the vehicle might get scratched, To be able to differentiate with those more minute use cases, you need to sample accelerometer data at a much higher frequency. And that's not a nice to have. That's going to be the difference between being able to identify patterns and build a solution that can really identify those different minor collisions from a major collision. And those minute variables are only visible at that level of fidelity. If you compress the signal, you might lose that context altogether. And then the other piece is just making sure from a diversity perspective, it's reflective of your customers' actual operations, right? So we're a global company. We couldn't just, for example, train a model that we wanted to deploy in Europe to European fleets on just North American data. That would mean that you haven't accounted for the road types or the climate or how the drivers in that region operate relative to other vehicles. And so you need to make sure that as you're designing these solutions, those variables unique to your customers' operations, their geography, the diversity of them are key inputs up front. And then lastly is just, quality is not a one-time achievement. As you improve your AI solutions, as you introduce new variables, you have to make sure that your quality keeps up. And that means you need to have processes in place where you can continuously validate reliability before that product goes out, but then on the go, be able to collect label data from your customers in the field and have that continuous feedback loop that you can use to help improve it. And so to me, those are really some of the key differences is like designing for those diversity inputs up front and those quality pieces that are going to determine whether, again, that trust degrades or your product ultimately can evolve.
That's super interesting. So thanks very much indeed. Bias is something we often associate with consumer AI, but it can affect any machine learning system. How does bias show up in connected vehicle data? And what practical steps can product teams take to identify and reduce it before it affects customers, would you say?
Yeah, so I would say that in many cases, bias in our industry or connected vehicle data might not always be intentional, right? It might be related to what I was describing previously, like a lack of thought in terms of those design inputs or variables or customer segments or conditions that naturally create blind spots that only become visible maybe when they're in the real world or at scale. And so that might be things like geography or fleet composition. And so ultimately, it's making sure that your training data isn't skewed towards one type of operating environment. And you're making sure that you are building training data sets and that your process considers that across all of the different operations and conditions you're seeking to deploy it, whether it's like cultures, infrastructure, the type of commercial operation, because those edge cases are where the failures will come in and can lose trust again. So yeah, some practical considerations is one, we try to consider those design considerations up front in the process and make sure that the team that comes to the table to consider those is diverse and can bring different perspectives in terms of technical, non-technical backgrounds, people who have experience working with customers, people who have experience with user experience and design, and we can surface those assumptions up front, and then just having explicit mechanisms and measures to be able to do bias auditing before deployment. And many of those things are part of GeoTab's responsible AI commitment, and things like privacy being a key element of that as well.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed for that. I just wonder, many organizations are racing to introduce AI features, but trust is becoming a competitive differentiator. I just wonder, how do you balance innovation with ensuring that AI outputs are accurate, transparent, and reliable enough for customers to depend on? Any thoughts there?
Yes, definitely. I always like to say that at GeoTab, I would rather us do less and with a really high bar and high reliability and trust than doing more at a lower quality. So I think things that we do to make sure that we have that accuracy and trust, it's about being close to your customers and working with them as we build these solutions. So they are part of our design process as well as our validation process for AI solutions and models. And we focus on going really deep on a problem and making sure that we iterate on it until it's of a high quality and reliability before releasing it. And we make sure that we don't just test in our office or in our labs or with internal testing, but that we test them in the real world. and
Yeah.
that we collect label data from our customers upfront to be able to give that stamp of approval and understand where we stand and make sure that we continuously improve until it gets to a place of pride. So yeah, precision and recall are some key metrics, especially when we look at machine learning models that are important to ensure that trust holds before it gets into customers' hands. I think to boil it down, this doesn't just apply to AI, but I think life in general is trust takes a long time to build, but it's so easy to lose, right? So making sure that you have those right checks up front. And then as you continuously make those updates and that you build that label data and feedback loop mechanism into the product can ensure that you have these solutions that can withhold trust at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. Looking ahead, where do you see AI creating the biggest opportunities for fleet operators and the wider automotive industry over the years? And what should businesses be focusing on today to be ready for that future, would you think?
Yeah, so it's a really exciting time, I think, to be in our industry and in this stage of technology transformation. There are so many opportunities. Personally, I still think that there's a lot of opportunity to help fleets increase their vehicle uptime and reduce their time to repair. So predictive maintenance is just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And not only that, I think there's a full end-to-end customer experience that has a lot of automation potential, from getting the vehicles to the right shops with the right parts at the right cost and back on the road as quickly as possible. So I see that area maybe evolving and a lot of opportunities to accelerate efficiency there. I think autonomy, so autonomous vehicles are going to be a big disruptor looking into the future, and how
Yeah.
AI helps with that, especially from a reliability perspective, but also how it can help the evolution of drivers' roles, their tasks, their day-to-day workflow and operations as their roles change and evolve in a world with autonomous vehicles will be key. And then I think ultimately there will be innovations across a number of different outcome spaces, whether that's collision reduction, uptime, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I think how fleet operators interact with data and intelligence and decisions is really going to change, right? A lot of larger companies have invested in their own AI tools, whether that's Claude or ChatGPT, et cetera. And I think being able to combine their fleet intelligence with their other business data will allow fleets to really compete and tailor insights and decisions to their specific business operations. And I really do think we'll get to a point of being able to leverage AI to surface decisions that fleet operators might not have thought about, or help severely accelerate some of that decision making for them, where they can bring that human judgment and context to the table. So yeah, that's kind of the first part. And then to your second part is like, what do fleet operators need to be thinking about now? I think they need to be thinking about, do they have the right partners with the right data infrastructure, data quality, data breadth, and the right AI strategy to help meet them where they are at their journey and help them through this transformation. That I think is more important than just features. Ultimately, making sure that that intelligence can be consumed in multiple places and is reliable, and that they have an open platform will be key as this evolves and scales. Because as we know, AI on top of bad data or fragmented data or low quality data will only result in poor results.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Just finally, if I may, if our listeners could remember just one lesson from your experience of building AI products, what would you like that takeaway to be?
I think something that holds true for me in terms of building products at scale, with or without AI, is it boils down to making your customers happy and solving a meaningful business problem for them. And secondly, is making sure that you focus on building a product your customers can trust. The minute you lose that trust and your AI solution is unreliable, you will cause doubt. And so building trust through results, high precision, I think explainability of your AI solutions, and then consistency of those results is going to be key. So yeah, designing for trust, security, and privacy for day one as core product requirements, and bringing your customers along the journey are the biggest lessons of how I think you can create more value.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Sabina. And that's all for this episode of Supplier Soundbytes from Mobility Global. Thank you very much for spending time with us. If you found this episode useful, please do follow us on LinkedIn for more insights from across the supplier ecosystem, and keep an eye out for new episodes coming soon. Bye for now.